Hello, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Today, Beats from the Big Chair Part 4. I'm going to show you a chopping technique which can help you if you feel a little bit uninspired, and it also keeps the fluidity, the kind of the groove of the original sample. It doesn't sound too chopped around and too jumpy. Let's jump in. So this is a bit of an old school technique. The main reason why I imagine it came about was to avoid copyright reasons. I'm not endorsing illegally sampling things, but of course, it's kind of what we do. So like I said, it's an old school technique. It's really, really simple once you grasp what it actually is, but it can be really, really effective. What I like about it the most is that it kind of, sometimes when you chop things up, and you're dancing around the pads, and you can have some happy accidents. You can, if you completely understand chord progression, you can have some fun with it and you can get it to sound good. But sometimes it just doesn't, and you've chopped it up and you don't want to use the original loop, and you're just kind of like, well, where can I go with this? This is a really, really quick way to just kind of immediately have something, because of the way that it works, it generally works, if that makes sense. Let me show you. Okay, so I've got a sample in the MPC. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop it up into 8 pieces, fairly straightforward. And we'll just get this all chopped up nicely and then put it into a program. Okay, that sounds good, okay? Okay, so let's now just convert that. And now, because it's my template, I've got that set up at a lower volumes. Let's just take that up just a tiny little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's where you normally are when you've made your chops. We can just do a couple of other fancy things here. Actually, let's just turn the tail on. And that just makes it sound more fluid. Okay, so like I said, there we go. We've chopped it up, normal 8 chops, and now we would start playing around. So we've decided that we don't want to run it forward exactly as it is, because there might be a problem with copyright, or somebody else might have used it before. That's actually probably more common, to be honest, because for me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, but for me personally, I don't tend to go into a track using a sample worrying about copyright. What I tend to do, and what I have done in the past when I've had to clear samples, I'll get to that point. So I'll work on the track, and I'm not going to sit there thinking, oh, is this going to clear? Oh my God. This is just me personally. I just crack on, get the track done. If it ever gets to a point where it gets signed to a label, I release it on my own label, and I need to clear the sample, then we start talking to lawyers and record labels, etc. But I don't really think about it. However, let's forget that side of it. Let's say that you've got your sample chopped up and somebody else has maybe used it, or you just kind of want it to be different. So you start playing around and nothing's really gelling for you at all. Now, this is a technique which I started using in the early 90s. Just totally found it by mistake, actually. I think what happened was I'd written in some MIDI wrong on Cubase, and suddenly I was, oh, okay, that sounds all right. And it's really, really, really simple. And once I've told you this, you could just turn the video off. But let's have some fun with it. So obviously running forward, there you go. But what you can do is just switch it around. Now I know that this is a technique that Pete Rock uses because I've seen him use it. So simply just take part of the sample. I'm not necessarily saying play the whole sample backwards, but you can. See, for instance, on this sample, it doesn't really work because it's got a crash cymbal at the start. But what you can do then is just play it backwards. But because you're playing it in order, the fluidity, the kind of original groove stays there, because sometimes I find, and I'm sure you do as well, if you're dancing around the pad, sometimes it can sound a little bit choppy, a bit kind of jumpy, it doesn't really fit together. Some of the sounds, there might be a sustained note on one of the pads, which is actually why I've used this particular sample, because of the sustained note. It doesn't match up with the next one that you use. So sometimes it's a bit difficult to get it to sound good. But if you're just hitting it backwards, another thing that you're going to get from that as well is just running it backwards. People might recognize the sample, but they'll be thinking, no, hold it a second, that isn't what I think it is, but it sounds exactly, is it a different part of the song? They'll be going through the record, trying to find the part of the song, going through who sampled, you're trawling the internet, where's this bit, where did he get this loop from? And all you've done is you've just played it backwards. So, I mean, let's have a play around with it. We'll just have it as 1 bar rather than 2 bars. So we'll start at the top, -1. So I mean, that to me sounds pretty decent already. So do you see what I mean? Really simple, really straightforward, but it keeps the groove, and any sustained notes you've got going on, they're not going to be as affected as much, and it's still going to kind of sound gelled and sound like it's supposed to be there. I kind of like that one. I kind of like that one actually. So let's just turn the metronome on. Just getting a rough idea of what the tempo was then, just by hitting just by hitting tap along to the tempo, and then you can do that and it gives you a rough idea and you don't have to mess around too much. So I know it's around about 95. So yeah, that sounds pretty decent. Let's go with that. Okay, let's turn metronome off. Okay, so another technique I'm just using there is just slowing it down slightly, and what it does is it will inject some swing into it, because the drummer is suddenly going to be coming, it's going to sound as though he's rushing or he's dragging, etc. So you can play around with that. It's a really nice way to take a sample and kind of inject a little bit of groove into it if there isn't some already there. You've sat it on the grid 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it can sound a little bit robotic. So just by playing with the tuning, the speed of it, very, very, only a tiny amount. You don't want to do it too much, because otherwise it's going to start having gaps or it's going to sound rushed and it won't sound in time. So you can still have it sounding in time, but just by shifting it either way and kind of get that swing. It's kind of that Dilla type sort of swing as well when you do things like that. Or Ninth Wonder is another person who does that quite a lot. Okay, let's just quickly see, of course, another great thing about that as well is sometimes by playing a loop backwards, it kind of builds tension. It's just the way that music theory works, the way the progression works. So you can build up tension. So what you could in effect do is have it, and then at some point in the song, so there you have it, super simple technique, another one you can throw in the arsenal, in the toolbox and use. For me, it's helped me out of a few scrapes where I've got a sample that I love, it's been used by somebody before, I really want to use it, and I want it to still sound musical, I want the progression, for it to work musically. So by playing it just backwards, you kind of get that because you're keeping a progression, you're just literally playing it in reverse. If you're familiar with any of the music I did as Liquid People, I did a track in the early 2000s for Defected Records called Monster, and that sampled a Simple Minds track called Changeling. And at the end of the track, there's a kind of outro part. And it sounds like a different part of the song, but I absolutely know that there were DJs that came up to me and producers and said, what part of Changeling is that? And that literally was me playing the sample backwards. I'd chopped it up on my 4000, I think I had then. Might have been a 2000, might have actually been a 3000. I had all three around about that time. I think it was the 4000 actually, because it was new and I think I was using it a lot more than the other two. And I literally just played it backwards, but it formed a great outro because it was still musically correct with the rest of the track. So same sample, but just kind of had a bit of tension and still had that kind of resolving effect that you have musically with chord progressions. So thanks for watching. I hope that helps. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.